Um, let's proceed with PHP arrays. PHP arrays are complex variables that allow us to store more than one value or group of values under a single variable name. Let's suppose we want to store colors in PHP script. Storing this color one by one in variable could look something like this. Anytime you're trying to store colors in PHP, you want to store values in PHP, you can store with your variable and what you're assigning to them, right? So in PHP arrays, what are arrays? Arrays are variable that allows us to store multiple values to them. Now you can look at this now. We have color 1 is equal to get color 2, color 3. These are different variable names that is used to store different all these colors. But what if you want to store the states of the states or city names of a country in variable? And this time, this is not just 3, maybe 100 of city or country names you want to store. It is quite hard, boring and bad idea to store each city name in a separate variable. This is where array comes to play, right? Array are used to store multiple values in one single variable. So what are types of array? We have indexed array, associative array, and multidimensional array. We have index array, an array with a numerical key. We have associative array, an array where each key has its own specific value. Then we have multidimensional array, an array containing one or more arrays within themselves. Let's look at this index array. An index array or numeric array store each array element with a numerical index. The following example shows two ways of creating an index array. The easiest way is this first one we have here. We have a normal PHP tag, define an index array. We have colors is equals to, there's an array function. Anytime you want to define an array, use this array function here. Array, you open brackets, and those values you want to store inside that variable will be in quotes separated by comma. From the word index, we have 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. The first index in an array is 0, which is this. This red is 0. This green is 1. While this one is 2. So we have 2 array here. Don't think because we have 1, 2, 3. This is 3. As it is 3, it is 2 because this red starts from 0. We have green as 1 and we have blue as 2. So despite that we have 3 values separated by comma in the array, but by their numerical index we have 2. So when you define colors is equal to array open brackets red in quotes comma green comma blue in quotes. If you want to add more comma violet in quotes and so on, purple in quotes and so on like that. Now define this array using this index array. You can also do it this way. This one is defined manually with a specific value. This one automatically the system knows that this is 0, this is 1, this is 2. At this point here, the variable declared, which is colors, now we assign their numerical index value to it in this block bracket. 0 is equal to red, 1 color 1 is equal to green, while colors in block bracket 2 is equal to blue. So this one is done in a manual method by assigning their index numerical value. That's for index array. Now we have associative array. In an associative array, The key assigned to values can be arbitrary and user-defined string. In the following example, the array uses keys instead of index number now. We have ages equal to array. We have Peter. Peter has 22 age. Clark 32. John 28. Now this now I see this man on this level. So as I was saying, the this array here make use of what is called a defined instead of using an index number, they are using key. Like this Peter is having key of 22. Then Clark is having key with an arrow function 32. John 28. This associative array here is the same thing as what we have at this bottom line here. You can define it this way as well. Ages Peter is equal to 22. So this is an array. They are array. So this is associative array. Arrays are used to store multiple values into a single variable. So now let's talk of PHP loops. What are loops? When you write code, you want the same block of code to run over and over again. Over and over again a certain number of times. So instead of adding several almost equal code lines in a script, we can use loops. Loops are iteration. We can use loops to iterate over a program to a specific number of times or to a particular number of times we want the code to be executed. So loops are used to execute the same block of code again and again as long as the starting condition is true. Loops are used to execute the same block of code again and again as long as a certain condition is true. In PHP, we have the following loop type. We have the while loop, we have the do loop, we have the while loop, we have the do while loop, we have the for loop, and we have the for each loop. In the while loop, while loops through a block of code as long as the specific condition is satisfied or true. As for while loop, while loop through a block of code as long as the specific condition is true. In do while loop through a block of code once, just once, and then repeat the loop as long as the specified condition is true or is met. Where we have the for loops, the for loop through a block of code a specified number of times, while the for each loop through a block of code for each element in an array. So we use for each loop to loop through arrays, elements in an array. So let's look at the while loop, the PHP while loop. The while statement will loop through a block of code as long as the condition specified in the while statement is evaluated to be true or are satisfied. The while loop, it loops through a block of code in as much as the condition is true or the condition that statement is satisfied or true. Let's look at this code example. We have PHP. This is the way to write your while loop, while with the condition in brackets, while the block of code to be executed will be in the curly braces. Look at this. Variable I is equal to 1. While open brackets with this condition that we have here, with this method of writing this method of writing is here. Now let's follow this format we have here to write the code out. Variable I is equal to 1. We declare a variable which I is 1, while which is the while condition with open brackets. Variable I is less than or equal to 3. Close the brackets. I have a block of code with curly braces here. Variable I plus plus. This is a post increment now. So we now echo the number is I. What we have here is that the value of I is set to 1. When the code gets to this place, why? To check is I less than or equal to 3, which is true. It will increment the I to be 2. It will check again. Is I now is now 2. Is 2 less than or equal to 3? It will continue, it will loop again. If it now get to 3, why 3 is less than or equal to 3, which is correct, which is true. It will now echo this I for you, for us, which means there's possibility of the program to to echo the value as 1, 2, 3 for us. So let's quickly try that and see what we can achieve with that using the while statement. Let me create a file, loops.php. And see PHP. So we're going to have our variable I equals to 1, while I is less than or equals to 3. So we increment I plus plus. So we echo so let's see how this code runs. Let me run the code for us. Loop. Sorry, I've just started my server. You can see the number is 2, number is 3, and the number is 4. So what this block of line of code is doing is we have assigned variable I is equals to 1. When the code gets to this place, it checks I is less than or equal to 3, which is true. It moves to 2. It increments the I to 2. So we're going to echo 2 here. So I'm saying it's going to echo the 2. Now it will now go back to this place and check is that 2 less than or equals to 3, which is true. By then, it's going to increment that 2 by 1 again to 3. So it's going to echo 2, 3. So you come here again and check is 3 less than or equal to 3. It's true. 3 is not less than, but it's equal to 3, which is true. So it's going to echo 4. So we're going to have 2, 3, 4 as our value. So that is why we are having 2, 3, 4 here as the value. Let me refresh to have a space. So that's for the while loop. Now for the do while loop, the do while loop is a variant of while loop which evaluates the condition at the end of each loop iteration. With a do while loop, the block of code is executed once and then the condition is evaluated. If the condition is evaluated and the condition is true, the statement is repeated as long as the specified condition evaluated is true. Let's look at this. This is a sample of how to write a do while loop. Do, we have the code to be executed and we have the while where the condition will be. Let's see the code example here. We have I, variable I is equal to 1. Do, it will come here. It will increment I. What is I here? I is 1. So if it increments to be 2, it will now echo 2. After echoing 2, it will now come here to check the condition. So this will always execute the do area of this code once, and after doing that once, it will now come here to check if the 2 that we have here that has been incremented to is less than or equal to 3. If it's less than or equal to 3, it will go back to the do again. So we have 2 already. So it will go there again and increment the 2 to 3. It will now check if 3 is less than or equal to 3. If it is true, if the condition is true, now the loop will stop. So that is how do while works. Let's write the example for that. Let me comment this line. Okay, let me just comment this line. Let me comment only this line out so that I can continue with my do. Let me say we have do. So we have $I plus plus to increment. Then we have echo. The number is what I have here before. The number is the variable where we have. After that, we now have the y. Then it will now check the condition is less than or equals to 3. So let's see what this do while loop is going to generate for us. Let's refresh. Sorry. I've repeated this twice, so I have to repeat this. So as this, we have the same results. When the program goes to this place, you can see that we have a variable of 1 declared already. Variable I is 1. When it gets to this place, it increments the I, the 1 to 2. It echo the 2. It now check if the value is less than or equal to 3, which is true. It go back there again. It goes to 3. From 2, it increments to 3 again. It checks. It echo the 3 and check if the value is less than or equal to 3. Of course, 3 is less than or equal to 3, which is true. Since it's true, it goes back to this do again. It now increments to 4. So it echo the 4. It comes to this place. 4 is less than or equals to 3, which is not correct. So the loop stops. The loop just jumps to this place and stops. So that's why we have 2, 3, 4 vehicle. If you change this value here to 2, you can see the value is going to give us 3 and 4. If you change value to 2, it's going to give us 3 and 4. If you change to 1, it's going to give us 2, 3, 4. And at the same time, if you change to 0, it's going to give you 1, 2, 3, 4. So since we're using one, it's fine. That is that about the do while loop. We also have difference between while and do loop. Difference between while and do while loop is the while loop differ from the do while loop in one important way. With a while loop, the condition is to be evaluated and tested at the beginning of each loop. As for the while, the condition is to be tested and evaluated at the beginning of each loop. So if the condition expression evaluates to false, the loop will never be executed. While the do while loop, on the other hand, the loop will always be executed once, even if the condition expression is false or true, because the condition is evaluated at the end of the loop iteration rather than the beginning. So the while loop evaluates its own condition from the beginning, while the do while loop evaluates its own condition at the end of the loop, at the end of the iteration. So we also have the for loop. The for loop repeats a block of code as long as a certain condition is met. It is typically used to execute a block of code for a certain number of time. And inside these for loops, there are parameters you need to follow. This is the way to write the for loop. This is the step to follow. For initialization, semicolon, condition, semicolon, and increment. Then we have the code to be executed. Now, the parameters we have in for loop are three: one, two, and three. The parameter is this. The first parameter is initialization. It is used to initialize the counter variable. Just like when we say I is equals to 1 or I is equal to 0. That's the initialization, that's the counter variable. And evaluated once unconditionally before the first execution of the body of the loop. We have the condition. In the beginning of each iteration, condition is evaluated. If it's evaluated to true, the loop continues and nested statements are executed. If it evaluates to false, the execution of the loop ends. Then we have the increment. The increment, it updates the loop counter with a new value. Just like when we have I plus plus, this is increment. It increments, it updates the loop counter because I plus plus is like a counter. So it increments it with a new value. When we have I plus plus from 1, let's say I is equal to 1. We now have I plus plus, that's 2. That's increments. So it is evaluated at the end of each iteration. This is another way of doing for loop. So we can take a look at this. We have for loop for I equals to 1, I is less than or equal to 3. Then we have I plus plus to increment. Then we echo number is I. Let's implement that in our editor. So I will comment this line again so that I can do the for loop. This is how the for loop works. So we say for I equals to 1, then put comma, we have I is less than or equals to 3. Then we have increments I plus plus. So we have a block of condition here. So we echo the value So this line is giving me error. I oh sorry, see my mistake. I didn't put $I here. So, so let's see how this for loop works. The value 1, 2, 3. Can see. So that is how the for loops work as well. We also have the for each loop. The for each loops are used to iterate over array. I will not go deep into this space for now. Maybe when you are writing a real project, you get to know how to use the for each loop sometimes if there is need be. Thank you.